Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Spider-Man PS4, as it's known, or just Spider-Man. I played it on the PS4 because that's what it's available on. The story of Spider-Man is not a particularly long one, but it is a very interesting one. It starts out with Spider-Man doing some pretty simple stuff, taking down Wilson Fisk, as if that's not a large order, but then what happens afterwards is where the story really gets going. He basically created a massive power void in the city, and he then has to deal with the repercussions of that. There's a lot of interesting twists and turns throughout the story. There are definitely some fun interactions. I mean, it is Spider-Man after all, so he has some really interesting interactions with everything. It's fun to also see that he's been doing the Spider-Man thing for a while. He's dealt with supervillains before. He's dealt with a lot of different things at this point, and he's really grown as a superhero. I like the way they did the entirety of the story, and I also like some things that they definitely set up for the future. I really hope there is a future. As for the audio in this game, it's very well done. I was really impressed by all of it. The voiceover work is excellent. I think they just did a really good job capturing everybody that they put into this game. On top of that, the sound effects for the combat, for swinging around, just for the city itself, all really well done, all very immersive. They make you feel like you're in there in that world. I also really enjoyed the soundtrack to this game, although I will admit it wasn't super noticeable when there was music going on, though it worked very well at enhancing the scene. As for the gameplay, that is where this game truly shines. It just stands out as an open world game. I was really impressed because they did a very good job of balancing having enough to do and not too much. There are definitely those games out there that are just too much and it becomes very overwhelming, but then there are those games that don't have enough and the world ends up feeling very empty and kind of boring. It's easy to get distracted by that stuff because doing those things are how you unlock other costumes, they're how you upgrade all your abilities, they're how you level up so that you can become better. I mean, really unlock new skills that will aid you in combat, aid you in getting around the city. Speaking of, I loved all the costumes in this game. I was really impressed with the number of costumes that they had. There's also one that really stands out because it's just kind of goofy. It's like comic book style, cel shaded in the middle of this much more realistic world. It's just kind of fun. I will say though, with all the costumes that they did have, I was a little disappointed. There were a couple that I was hoping for, like the original Iron Spider suit or the original symbiote suit. Not there, which was a little disappointing. Maybe they'll pop up in one of the DLCs, but I liked the suits. I also thought it was cool what they did with the suits because the suits can actually affect your abilities. Not that you need to wear a specific suit for a specific ability. As you unlock suits, you unlock abilities that are attached to those suits. You can then apply those abilities to any other suit that you want. I rocked the Spider-Punk a lot. I also rocked the Scarlet Spider. Also, regarding all those side missions and whatnot, it does an excellent job of giving you a good variety. Which is important because a lot of games, it just gets really grindy. And I mean, some of these you're like, I feel like I've done this before, but not to the extent where you're like, oh god, I have to do this again. I do want to address one thing with the combat. This is the biggest flaw in the game. Not the combat itself, but the camera during combat becomes honestly one of your biggest enemies. It definitely became challenging to basically target who I wanted to because the combat is very fast paced, so the camera keeping up with it is difficult. And when that happens, you can be looking at no enemies for a while, and next thing you know, you have 3 guys right behind you about to whoop your ass. That being said, the rest of the time I didn't have any problems with it, like swinging around and getting around the city. Didn't have any issues with that. Next up are the controls. The controls worked very well. I do have one small complaint. I did find that there were times where I was climbing on a wall and I would want to jump off. It didn't work as well as I would have liked it to. It was a bit of a struggle, which is annoying, but it wasn't due to anything like I was pressing the wrong buttons or anything. It was just because it wasn't letting me do that for some reason, whatever the reason was. Otherwise, during combat, when you're swinging around, the controls work very well. I didn't have any major issues with them, just that small one. When you're controlling the camera, it works very well. Like I said though, during combat, when the camera's kind of doing its own thing and following you, it doesn't always keep track the way you need it to. Lastly, the graphics. This is a beautiful game. I'm not going to tell you it's the best looking game I've ever seen, but it is definitely an amazing looking game. Insomniac really did a fantastic job with the graphics of this game. There is so much detail in the world, there's so much detail into the major characters, not like every single character. Like down to the detail in the costumes, it's fantastic. It's just really impressive. I also just enjoy their art style, their take on all the characters, their character design, their way of doing the suits, their way of doing everything basically. I liked their tweaks. So to wrap this up, honestly, this is a near flawless game. It really is. The only gripe I had is the camera. Everything else I've really loved about this game. It was a really engrossing experience. And this is hands down the best web swinging in any Spider-Man game I've ever played. So yeah, it's obviously a recommend. I don't care if you're not a fan of Spider-Man. I don't care if you don't like action games. It's a recommend. Go enjoy it. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me what your favorite Spider-Man costume is? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.